The things that makes for lasting changes, they are on the altars of encounters. I want to show you 5 disadvantages that encounters turn around and make a mess of. An encounter can rubbish your limitation as if it was nothing. An encounter can change a mountain before you to a plain, and it will look as if it never existed. That's why wise men chase after encounters. Encounter is the activator of the power of destiny. And until the power of destiny is activated, the gate of hell will prevail. Even if it is the mandate of God, even if it is the assignment of God, even if it is what the territory needs, the gate of hell will prevail. Until there is an encounter, there will be no emancipation. I pray somebody hears me tonight. I experienced something very terrible that turned my life around. Serving as a young man, and one of our colleagues from a very wealthy home never had need for Alawi. And 2 weeks to POP, the father died. A young man that was already being ticked to work with Arik Airline over 10 years ago. Things were working on their own accord. His confidence was on the powers of his family, but Hades struck and his life turned around. All of a sudden, his father's friends turned their back at him, and I saw a glorious destiny turned upside down in a moment. And I now knew what the Bible meant when it said, woe unto him that putteth his trust in the arm of flesh. The reason is because there is a gate called the gate of Hades. Life cannot be lived casually. Everything you call an advantage can become a mirage unless there's an encounter to endorse it. This is why we can't live as normal men. Everything can become a mirage. Everyone must join into the spirit for himself. It is the call of existence that everyone will meet his creator. And wise men meet their creator in time, not in eternity. Because when you meet him in eternity, it might just be judgment. But if you meet him in time, you will straighten your path and your life will be a testimony. He is the Holy Ghost, Spirit of the living God. He is the Holy Ghost, Scepter of the King of Kings. He is the Holy Ghost, Spirit of the age to come. He's changing everything in obedience to God. The activator of the power of your destiny. None of you here is small. None of you here is disadvantaged. Can I tell you something? The family you come from is not necessarily an advantage or a disadvantage if you have the right encounters. Most of the great men that are changing their world today came from very poor backgrounds. But they knew what it meant to catch God. So they were God chasers. But the generation that we are in today is a generation that rely on only heritages. They never catch anything in the spirit. So even what the fathers labor for, when it is handed over, they waste it because they don't know how it is caught. I heard Warren Buffett said something. He said he will not plague his children with his wealth. It will be a burden for them. If they don't know how to create it, they can't manage it. And so it is in the spirit. Your tears can be wiped away in a moment if you know how to engage the spirit. Your sorrows can be turned around. The question is, what are the quality of your encounters? When you look at a man's life, the quality of his life is the quality of his encounters. The quality of a man's life is the quality of his encounter. Saul was a commoner from the tribe of Benjamin in one day, but he encountered a prophet and something changed. He migrated from a commoner to a king by an encounter. The quality of your life is the quality of your encounter. So if you are wise, you will live your life pursuing after God to catch something. What you need for your destiny is not anywhere, it's in the spirit. But the question is, can you climb the mountain? Encounters. The empowerment for destiny. I want to show you 5 disadvantages that encounters turn around, to show you that your condition is not hopeless. And before this conference is over, most of you will have literal encounters. Some with the Lord, some with his angels, some with the word of the Lord. Acts chapter 7 verse 1 and 2. Now Abraham came from the regions of Mesopotamia. It's called the Hall of the Chaldees. And that was a region that was plagued by idolatry. Abraham's grandfather Nahor was one of the princes of Nimrod that built the Tower of Babel. So they knew how to survive without God. It was a territory where men had perfected how to survive without God. So Abraham came from an idolatrous background, where it looked as if God does not count. His father was part of the architects that raised the Tower of Babel. and God came and divided their language, and they scattered around the world. So it was a generation that God was against. So there was no advantage that he had. It's just like some of us that are from idolatrous background. Your grandfather can be a priest of a dark prince, but it's not a disadvantage. My grandfather was a prince of darkness. They told me ministers that succeed, some of them have a genealogy of pastors. That this one succeeded because he's the 6th in the genealogy of pastors. The great-grandfather, the grandfather, and the father were evangelists. That's why he succeeded. I went back to scripture and I discovered it's not an advantage. Even if it is, for the one who doesn't have that, it's not a disadvantage, because Abraham came from darkness. But the Bible said something. When Stephen was about to be stoned, he began to read the Chronicles of Abraham. And he said, men and brethren, fathers, hearken, the God of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Charan. Before Abraham ever began to have meaning in life, the Lord had appeared to him. And in Genesis chapter 12 from verse 1 to 2, the secret of his greatness was predicated upon the encounter, not his ancestry. Is there an advantage in a godly heritage? Yes. But in case you don't have godly heritage, are you doomed? No. Blessed is the man that feareth the Lord and delighted greatly in his commandment. His seed shall be mighty upon the earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed. So a godly heritage is an advantage. What if you don't have? The remedy is an encounter. My father may not be a governor. I'm not disadvantaged. My father may not be a pope. I am not disadvantaged, because there is something called spiritual encounter. And God is not a respecter of persons. Any man that seeks the Lord will be gracious to appear unto him, because he's plenteous in redemption. Encounter is the leveler in time. The buffer of destiny is encounter. Now the Lord had appeared to Abraham. Get thee out of thy country. When God wanted to handle Abraham's matter, he even taught Abraham, because he came from a people that had confidence in their family. Have you seen people like that? My father just came from the governor's house, and the governor said things will be wild. You have not seen time. If you have lived here enough, you will know that this time does not exist on a solid foundation. He said the world is on water. So nothing in this realm is solid. The only thing you can stand on, the pillars you can stand on, is the name of the Lord. That's why I said the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth therein. Get thee out of thy country, out of thy kindred, out of thy father's house. Come to the land that I will show you. And he said, in blessings I will bless you. And indeed shall all the families of the earth, including that family you left, shall be blessed. No believer is disadvantaged. People are only bereft of encounters. This is a man without a heritage, yet he was not disadvantaged. The second thing you will call a disadvantage is a physical inability. God has called you to lead, and you say you adore, and you think it's a disadvantage. God has called you to speak to a generation, and you say you are a stammerer, you think it's a disadvantage. God has told you, I will make you a queen, and you looked at yourself in the mirror and you are not fair. And then you are wondering, which prince will love me? There is something that remedies physical disadvantages. It's called an encounter. Moses was a stammerer, had no advantage at all to lead and to command a generation, but an encounter turned the story around. And in Exodus chapter 3 from verse 1, the Bible said something amazing. Moses had been laboring for 80 years of his life, until the Bible said, and now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God. The end of that physical disadvantage is what? To come to the mountain of God. The stammerer came to the mountain of God. You wanted to start a business, no capital, and you have asked all your friends and everybody you know is now hopeless. He said, come to the mountain of God. There is a place that no fowl knoweth. The vulture's eyes have not looked upon it. It is called the mountain of God, where the disadvantage of men no longer counts. And when God sent Moses, he said, but he's a stammerer. And the Lord told him something. Who created the mouth? You think you are ugly, so you will not succeed. How do men see? You can be ugly, but the one that God chose for you can see you as a princess. That's why they say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So God can choose to make him see you the way he wants him to see you. But people don't labor to come to the mountain. Many men have shut their destinies down by looking at themselves. What we look for is the mountain of God. They looked unto him and they were radiant, and their faces were not ashamed. Physical disadvantage has nothing to do with your destiny. If only you will have the right encounter. I've heard a lot of stories. They tell people it will not work. Who told you like this can do it? The person doing it, by what ability is he doing it? There is a power called the power of ordination. That's what encounters give. The third disadvantage or hindrance is territorial hindrance. Where you come from can be a disadvantage. Remember what Daddy said when he came up. Ministries were not thriving in Asaba. Why is this one thriving? So Asaba was not the problem. The men that came to Asaba were the problem. They didn't have the encounter that could cause the princes to bow. Daniel was in Babylon. Everything about Babylon is corruption. You couldn't go to Babylon and survive. The children of Israel had lost their heritage. They did not even remember where they came from anymore. Only Daniel and his friends were upright in Babylon. But something kept them standing. They knew the God that revealed secrets, encounters. They tell you you will not succeed because you are here and there. There are many people in the best places in the world not succeeding. A lady called me 2 weeks ago. Has been in London for 16 years without a job. Struggling barely to survive. 16 years. Meanwhile, there are many Nigerians traveling through Sahara Desert to go to Europe. 16 years in London without a job. And the word of the Lord went forth. And in less than a month, she got a job with an official car. I told her, what makes the difference is where you are speaking from. There's a battle in the spirit called the battle of heights. That was why Lucifer wanted to exalt his throne. Because the higher you go, the more authority you exert. That's why Moses came to the mountain of God. When Moses came to the mountain of God is higher than the mountain of Egypt. So Moses could come with one staff and destroy the civilization called Egypt. One staff. He didn't have an army. He had an encounter. One staff can bring down the government of a nation. One staff can bring down a civilization because of an encounter. He went to the mountain of God. Your territory is not a disadvantage. The question is, what are the qualities of your encounters? I'll be rounding up in another 5 minutes and we'll pray briefly. Like I said, it's the first night. I just came to trouble the waters. But most of you, we have destiny-changing encounters before this conference is over. You have looked at men before. You have looked up to men before. Go and ask people who succeed. They will tell you how many men failed them. If you see a man who looks up to men, he has not succeeded. That's why he's still deceived. He said, woe unto him that putteth his trust in the arm of flesh. Any man who succeeds will tell you he's a spirit. God told me. God made it happen. I learned it by following men that succeeded. And no one had a testimony apart from God. Why do we labor preaching? Is to lead people to God. That's why we don't preach ourselves. We preach Christ and we his servants. Because every man must meet his creator before he leaves this realm. That's what we define the quality of his life. But that's the last thing believers are doing. So a believer can travel from one state and go and sit down for 3 weeks to see a prophet. But he cannot stay in the place of prayer for 3 days. If you woke up tonight, your story can change. It's possible. That's what I came to tell you. It's possible. The fourth disadvantage is the scar of a wrong life. Some people think they can't succeed anymore because they live the wrong life. I was a harlot. I was a murderer. I was a criminal. The life of Paul told us otherwise. He wrecked on the church. God sent him back to build the church. The brothel where the harlot lived, she can go back to that brothel and change it. The thief can go back into the world of criminals and change it. The difference is encounters. In Acts chapter 9, from verse 4 to 5, he had received letters to go to Damascus to wreak havoc on the church yet again. And the Lord appeared. He said, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And instantly turned. He said, who are you, Lord? His life was about to change. You can be a known criminal. No scar can stand the fires of encounter. Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Who art thou, Lord? I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. It is hard to kick against the pricks. Now rise ye up and go into the city. You will be told what you should do. And a thief became an apostle. You may have become a slave of the wrong life. You may have become a victim of the past. But an encounter can rewrite the story. Joyce Meyer was raped by her father. But no scar can stand when you go through the fires of encounters. Rahab, the known harlot, her house was on top of the city. The fence of the city, that was where she lived. So anybody coming in and out of the city must see her. She was a renowned harlot, but she had an encounter. And Rahab became part of the progenitors of Jesus Christ. It is recorded in scriptures today that Jesus came through her lineage. What was the difference? Encounters. It doesn't matter if you were a harlot. It doesn't matter if you have even had 2 children from 2 different fathers, 5 children from 5 different fathers. Did you not read the story of the Samaritan woman? Go, call thy husband. I have no husband. In that you said true, because you've had 5 husbands, and the one you are living with is not thy husband. Who are you? And suddenly, if you knew who it was that asked thee for a drink, you would have asked of me, and I would have given you rivers of living water. Who art thou? I am he. And instantly, a harlot turned to an evangelist. A woman with the worst life, the whole city knew her. And one harlot took over the whole city, because the whole city came to Jesus. Who taught her the gospel? When did she read the Torah? She was not trained, but she had an encounter. She never went to a Bible school, but she had an encounter. The gospel is not for those who are learned. The gospel is for those who have seen the Lord. Because Mary Magdalene, from whom 7 demons were cast out, was the first to preach the New Testament. Encounters can turn the lives of people around. Before she went to the well, she was a harlot. When she came back from the well, she was an evangelist. The power of encounter. Before you came to church, you may be a liar, but you may go back from church as an apostle. It's an encounter. You may come to church as a beggar, but you may go back as a king. It's a 400 broken men came to David in Cave Adullam, and David showed them the way of the Lord, and these men became the mighty men of David. When David wanted to build the house of God, those men gave goods worth $22 billion in our day. 400 broken men that were in debt. The difference is encounter. Instead of troubling your life and living hopelessly, go and cleave to the horns of the altar, and your disadvantage will vanish. He said when Israel left Egypt, Judah was a sanctuary. He said the mountains saw them and fled. He said the mountains skipped like ram before them. Even Jordan went back, and he said, why fleetest thou, O mountain? Why skippest thou, O mountain? Jordan, why are you going back? He said, let the whole earth tremble. Let the whole earth tremble. They told you nothing works in Asaba. You have not had an encounter. You have not had an encounter. When a spirit wants to show you his might, he will even send you what is noble. He can tell you, go and start selling pure water, and then your life will disgrace the spirits of Asaba. When a spirit wants to exhort you, he can tell you, go and stand by the roadside and begin to sell razor blade. And then you will know that the powers of Asaba is nothing compared to the beauty and the splendor and the might of God. He said the voice of God is upon many waters. The voice of God is full of majesty. He said the mountains skip at that voice. He discovered the forest. He divided the flames of fire. The voice of God. When God speaks from the mountain, everything bows. Let the earth tremble. This is what we know, that we enter territories with boldness, because we come in the name of the Lord. Nothing is a disadvantage if a man can have the right encounters. Nothing. And the last thing is to be a child and to be inexperienced. You know, that can be a great disadvantage. So they want to employ people in Chevron, and they now say, well, you must have 10 years advantage. A certificate of a man with encounter can make for an advantage. What then is the protocol of encounters? If encounters are so important, how do we have it? Is it available to everybody? Yes. Because everybody was created to live in the presence. So encounters are available to everybody. The question is, have you had yours? How do encounters begin? First, it begins with hunger. A burden can be stirred in your heart. You don't know what it means, but all of a sudden you want to go to church. All of a sudden you want to pray. All of a sudden you want to stay with the brethren. All of a sudden you want to hear the word of the Lord. That is the woo of the Spirit. When the Spirit begins to woo a man, he begins to put burdens in the heart. That's how God answers questions that men cannot answer. He begins to put a body to draw you. Did you read about Moses? He said, and Moses came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Horeb is the backside of the mountain, is not where to graze. But something that was invincible was drawing him. So Jesus said, no man cometh to me except him that the Father have drawn. So when hunger begins to rise in your heart, wise men begin to attend to hunger. The reason why most of our lives don't count is because we abort burdens. The Holy Ghost brings a hunger, and that's when you begin to watch a seasonal film. Is it a sin to watch a seasonal film? No. But seasonal film is a doctor of abortion. It will remove the hunger from your spirit, and then one man will be moving around one mountain for a lifetime. In 1 Samuel chapter 3 from verse 1, he said, and the child Samuel ministered before the Lord, and in those days the voice of God was scarce. But something happened. He had an encounter, and suddenly inexperience was no longer a disadvantage. Suddenly being a child was no longer a disadvantage. And in 1 Samuel chapter 3 verse 19, he said, and the whole of Israel knew that the Lord had established Samuel as a prophet. Encounters establish men. Because the word of the Lord appeared again in Shiloh. The word of the Lord appeared to Samuel in Shiloh. The Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. I read the story of Smith Wigglesworth, 45 years, illiterate and a plumber. But he had an encounter, and he brought his word to its knees. He was such a cruel man that he could lock his wife outside in the cold. But an encounter changed him to become a global apostle of faith. There's no disadvantage in time, because encounter brings the dimension of heaven and superimposes it into your realm. How many burdens have you aborted? You were drinking and suddenly you saw that guy and something moved in your heart and you say, I want to be like this guy, and God begins to draw you and you waste it. You want to know wise men? Wise men are stewards of burdens, so they never miss their seasons. Because when a season of encounter comes, it comes with hunger, it comes with drawings. You can be with Jesus yet waste, because Judas was with him and wasted. If you don't know how to steward the resources of the Spirit, you will waste. The greatest blessings in this world is not the gift of a car. The greatest blessings in this world, one of them is the gift of spiritual hunger. When that burden comes, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? That's what will determine your emancipation. Because the power to change your story is in an encounter. But what takes you to the mountain of encounter is a hunger. It's a burden. It's a burden. Sometimes it's just a song, and that song is playing in your heart for 2 weeks. But many don't know how to steward it, and they lose it. They keep losing it, and they are praying and asking God, when will my story change? Your story has changed many times, but you didn't know how to enter, because he said the labor of the foolish wearieth every one of them. They know not how to enter the city. They think a man of God will lay hands on them and change their story, but when that man laid hands on them, he released the hunger in their spirit. It was their duty to attend to that hunger. They couldn't. So Paul said to Timothy, he said, this charge give I unto thee, that thou will fan to flame the gift of God that was put in you by the laying on of hands of the presbytery. It doesn't end with laying on of hands. That organic thing that begins in your spirit, what do you do with it? That's what determines the encounters you will have. Your life can be an endless stream of encounters if you can count your hunger and preserve your burdens.